Alright, welcome to this behind the scenes of the movie Snooze. My name is Ben Schubert. I am a filmmaker based in Vancouver, BC, Canada. So one of the first challenges that I wanted to do with this film is that I wanted to do it all by myself. Day one, I shot all the exteriors, which was really just that one scene. I brought a C-stand with a hula hoop and just draped the sheet from the hula hoop. So lighting setup on day one was really just using natural light, sunny day, had it backlit. So day two was the end of the film. So going to pick up the alarm clock, all that stuff. So for the bulk of the interior shooting, I used my Aperture 300D for that kind of daylight look. Using it for, soft daylight, I wanted this to look moody. I also used a small 7-inch Lumahawk LED panel that I've had for years. I could set it up on clamps and clamp it to things as a top light. So it was really handy, kind of just like as a side edge light. You'll see it in places. So my other big light that I used was a 12-inch LED light panel, really simple. I was expecting to use that kind of as my top light and side light, but instead I actually used it as my gag light for the hole, which we'll get into later. So day three, I filmed the crawling out of the hole gag, which I did by using my 12-inch light panel under the bed, and it had a purple filter on it, and then just kind of blasted both the orange and blue light, and that kind of gave this weird orangey weird kind of glow to signify that I'm climbing out of the hole that I would go into later. And also again, the 300D was set up just to the side of me, just to kind of light the bed and give that nice soft look. And so after that stunt, I set up the bed vertically so I could have the start doing the falls on the climbing scenes. So right now I just finished setting up for what is essentially going to be the middle scene, so the climbing stuff and everything of the falling. That's what I'm working on right now. You'll see I've got this bed set up over here. I've got the Aperture 300D. It's on like full blast, shooting through the light dome and through this sheet. And the sheet's, the sheet's practical. It's part of the set, but also it's used as a nice extra bit of diffusion, which is making me look good. Yeah. And so this is how I'm going to shoot the falling and the climbing sections of this film. So day four was the same vertical setup with the bed, doing more climbing, more falling, and shaving in between to kind of give that sense of time changing. And then once I wrapped all of the climbing and falling stuff, I flipped the bed over so it's still vertical, but kind of on its horizontal edge, and then set up for what I call the mountaintop reveal. So the first thing up on day five was the reveal of the top of the mountain, where I show that I'm really just sticking my head out of the blankets on the other edge of the bed. And so after that, it was time to shave again. Then I set up the bed for the crawling around section, or at least the first actually horizontal crawling around section. And so for that, it was a 300D with reflector, and I shot it up at the ceiling, at the top corner of the ceiling, to just really like bounce a ton of light. I cranked it up to 100%. I wanted as much light kind of bouncing off the ceiling as possible to give a nice flat and even look, and I knew that the sheet would diffuse it quite a bit and bring down my exposure. The only stuff that I filmed in HD was that crawling stuff, and that's mostly just because I'm shooting on the EOS R, and so there's a big crop on the 4K footage, but I wanted the full frame look for while I was actually under the sheets. After the crawling section, I remade the bed, put the light dome back on the 300D, and relit it for, a more moody aesthetic. Then I did the first round of reveals where I take the blanket off, look at the clock, put the blanket back on. I did a bunch of those, and then I did my last round of shaving where I shaved all the way down to the skin, which was the first time in 5 years. So feeling really weird about how I look without a beard right now. And then from there, I just redid the last two things over again. Did all the sleeping wake up stuff, so everything outside of the sheets, and then relit it back to the sheet setup, and then did all the crawling. So that's all I have right now. I'm gonna go back to editing. I've got a lot of work. I've got a small window to do it in, so gonna get this done. Now I want to talk about post, right? So we talked about production, what it takes to actually shoot the film, but now I actually want to talk about editing. So a lot of the editing was fairly straightforward in that, you know, the whole thing was shot in 24p. Most of it was shot in 4K. There's a handful of shots that were shot in HD and some stuff that was shot on the GoPro. So I did the bulk of the editing in Premiere Pro, and then once I had a cut that I liked, then typically what you do in a film is you lock your cut, and then you split the work into your color grade and your sound design. And so for the music of it, it's largely that alarm clock, and then I built out sounds to go with it, right? So this little beat that matches the rhythm of the alarm clock, right? And that comes up in and out throughout the film. Then there's a bass line that's just a muted version of the alarm clock. I wanted the music bed to be just the alarm clock changing and shifting as the film goes on, and then cutting back just to the alarm clock right when we're, you know, looking at it in what's supposed to be our objective reality. For sound effects, a lot of the sounds that I actually recorded for the film, some of them made it in, but a lot of them, they're not as rich as you'd expect. And this is pretty typical for film production. Most of what's actually recorded in film production is dialogue. On set, that is the primary focus for audio recording, is just dialogue. And then afterwards, in the sound design stage, what typically happens is you rebuild everything. And so I started off with essentially doing my Foley track. And so for this, there wasn't a ton of contact points, but I mainly focused on doing a cloth track. And so what I did is I took the sheet and I just rubbed it together, reenacted my film while watching it. So I set up some mics and rubbed the sheet in time with the actions in the film. I wanted the sheets to have a strong presence, and I wanted to really hear them as you're moving around. And then I did another one where I just put my hoodie back on and just like rubbed so that my actions, which don't always correspond with the sheet, get picked up as well. And then from there, I took all those tracks and I synced them up in post, put them under, did some tweaks, cleaned them up, and then that was a lot of my sound design for the film. And so then from sound design, I actually went into color grading. I did an initial grade in Premiere. I didn't love it. It looks pretty close to what I did in the final, but the final one has some really nice touches. It's a lot more polished. It looks a lot cleaner. I like the grade a lot better. And so what I did for that is I sent it to DaVinci Resolve. And so for that, when you're sending something to DaVinci Resolve, you want to work with an XML file. And so you can just export an XML file and then import that file in DaVinci Resolve, and then you have your timeline. And you can take your timeline, you can edit it if you want, you can start manipulating it, and you can start color grading. And so I liked the cut, so I just went into grading it, and I came up with a look that I really liked that kept the skin tones pretty rich, pretty sharp, and with a good brightness. And then I actually brought down a lot of the background in the grade. Normally from there I'd send it back from Resolve to Premiere and finish up there, but I wasn't liking the look that I was getting by doing that way. And so I actually exported the audio from the Premiere file and then put it into Resolve and exported the solid thing from Resolve, which I think gave me my best look overall. Anyway, so that was a look at how I did that film. If you have any questions about what I did in the film that I didn't address in this video, leave it down in the comments. Anyways, I really liked this process. I used to shoot a ton of short films, so I think I'm going to start doing more of that and more tutorials on this kind of filmmaking. And so if you like that sort of thing, follow along and subscribe for the journey. Anyways, I'll see you later.